Hola todos. So, as promised in previous videos and hinted at, today I'm going to be doing my Halloween special. So, a lot of people refer to Dark Harvest as the darkest episode, and maybe it's the grossest episode, just depending on your gross tolerance. But I mean, this is Invader Zim we're talking about, and honestly, there's a lot of options to pick from. In my opinion, Dark Harvest is actually pretty mild compared to some other stuff. And the darkest episode to me, personally, is a tie between Bad Bad Rubber Piggy, since Sim literally, albeit temporarily, succeeds in killing Dib. Even when Dib is still a younger kid. In that episode where he gets killed, he was younger than he is now. So maybe like 9, 10 years old at that time. Yeah, dark stuff. It's Invader Zim. But yeah, it's tied with the episode we're going to talk about today, which is the Halloween Spectacular of Doom. Now, what makes this episode stand outishly dark to me is the fact that Dib literally gets sent to an insane asylum. Yeah, I'm not sure if they actually call it an asylum, but it's what it is. So before I get into the real analysis part, I want to give it a little bit of a review first. So firstly, it's really hard to separate Dib's reality from the one that's an illusion because he snuck into his father's lab and borrowed this device that can allow travel to other dimensions. He misused it and caused everything to glitch, which is like kind of almost a different version of a device in one of my own stories where traveling dimensions is a huge theme. But this isn't about my stories. This is about Invader Zim. So, his theory is that interdimensional clashing is a main cause of paranormal events, which to me is like such an interesting concept of his own that I would love to see Jonan make an entire like cartoon just around this concept. I think he could do some really, really freaky and hilarious stuff with it. But moving on, because what makes this episode dark, aside from a kid getting sent to an asylum, is that we actually get to see just a really big peek inside of Dib's big head, which is such a sad place. Now, I don't want to get too deep, but I probably will anyway, since I recently got the art book for my birthday, and reading some what the writers say shows that they do seem to think a lot and care a lot about the psyche of their characters. And also this episode is psychological horror, so I think it's gonna give insight anyway. And my INTP brain literally prevents me from looking too deep into stuff. So here we go. So Dib sees the world as this dark and dreary place, what it is, but his imagination really amps things up. Not only does it make this particular concept and episode perfect for Halloween, because that means the horror gets to go up to 12 out of 10, but it also means the way Dib views the world is not just bleak, but I mean, it's just terrifying, terrifying monsters on every corner. And what on earth is that thing? What is that thing? Okay, this is, I guess, what some will call Nightmare Dib. I will call it Potato Dib, since it looks like a potato. And I feel like it represents how Dib feels other people see him, as an annoying freak. But I'm not going to talk about this thing for too long because I hate it. I absolutely hate this thing, and I want to move on. And I cannot possibly go without mentioning Nightmare Membrane and Gaz because their depictions are the reasons why I wanted to analyze this in the first place. Because the way they're portrayed just gives so much insight into the psyche, and it really encapsulates the worst part of his family relationships. In the same way, Enter the Florpus encapsulated the best part of his family relationships. So, I guess first I should talk about this episode totally has Membrane's worst moment in the entire series. I'm going to stand by the fact that he loves his children. Yes, that includes Thib. Um, and people that want to fight me can pull that out of my cold, dry hands. It's literally been confirmed by the writers, so yeah. But, I mean, the fact he lets his son get thrown to the asylum just shows that he has absurd levels of obliviousness to not know how horrible of an experience that it would be. It's either that or he just didn't really care. Uh, I've seen speculation that he felt guilty for it, and I do think that's possible, given that the expression of his face looks not only disappointed, but it seems like there could be some guilt there. Okay, I'm digging too deep. But it is possible that he thought shock therapy would be the best thing to cure Dib's insanity at this point. But either way, it's just a total jerk move. And this moment right here is probably one of the biggest reasons the fandom is so divided in loving, hating, or just being apathetic to Membrane. Again, I don't hate him, but there's no denying that this is his darkest moment. And it's just not justifiable no matter how you look at it. And something about the fact that the line, I expected to find you here eventually, is repeated by the nightmare version of Membrane just sends chills up my spine. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is, but I guess maybe it just shows how much of how betrayed Dib felt at that point. That it was able to work its way into manifesting into a monstrous membrane in his subconscious. And dear God, nightmare Gaz, dear God, I thought Potato Dib was terrifying. This design, like the design of some of the, I'm gonna go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but the designs of some of the nightmare creatures in this episode, they only have just a couple minutes of screen time, but look how much of an impact they had on the fandom. I mean, that is just incredible character design and just incredible management of a horrific tone. This is perfect for Halloween, but it's just excellent horror. I have seen movies directed, or parts of movies at least, directed at adults that are supposed to be horror, but those, like, they pale in comparison to this, what is supposed to be a children's show. It's honestly amazing, and I can't help but just stop for a minute and give the people that work on the show so much praise for the amount of talent that they've put here. They could have gotten away with so much less, but you can tell they just loved working on this show, and it just shows so much in this particular episode. I love it. I love this episode. And even though I already watched it once for the purpose of, first, because Invader Zim, and I love it, but also making this episode. I'll probably watch it again this Halloween and maybe more after that because it's just so good and it really gives me the creeps. And I love getting the creeps. Anyway, let's get back to the analysis. It's obvious that Dib wants to be loved and have a good relationship with his family, but unfortunately, until Enter the Florpus, there's no hope for him. And the whole opening his head thing, yeah, it's very literal in this episode, but it can also refer to people trying to open his head in a sense of figuring out the reason he's so insane and trying to fix him. I may or maybe not have written an episode around that concept. I mean, a fanfiction episode, obviously. Just maybe read my fanfiction. Maybe I put a lot of time into it. Anyhow, let's finally get to talking about the this the one that really stole this episode, besides Membrane and Gaz nightmare forms, is Miss Bitters here. The first thing I thought when I saw this was, this has got to be her true form. There's just something about her in, and this is one of the reasons why it's such a shame this series got killed off so early, because wouldn't it have been such a cool plot twist if they got a chance to make an episode revolving around revealing that Miss Bitters is actually not a human, but actually an other mother like Aldrich abomination that instead of being a teacher, like she was actually cursed to have the teaching job somehow. And honestly, all this speculation that I've seen, uh, I read one blog post specifically. I think it's from Danatron on Tumblr. Um, I'll try to link it because it's very good. So I won't go too into this because they do a good enough job explaining it themselves. But it's about Div having some really bad trauma concerning Miss Bitters, just beyond her being a terrible and abusive teacher. It, I think it really shows in this episode just how horrifying he sees her, and the fact that she is the one basically leading, trying to open, like literally open his head and see what's inside, and that it takes place inside the school. I think this says more about Miss Bitters, or at least the way Dib's experiences with her, than you might would think. And I guess it's